Commissioner Ramsey, Deputy Mayor Gillison, Deputy Mayor Rich Negrin, Deputy Police Commissioner Rich Ross, Public Safety Director Mike Resnick, City Representative and Director of Communications Desiree Peterkin-Bell, Giselle Jones, who's our Special Events Coordinator at the Managing Director's Office, Sue Lawson, Patrick Morgan, and Joe Callan from the Department of Parks and Recreation. Jeff Knuppel, Deputy General Manager of Operations at SEPTA, Thomas Nestel III, Chief of Police at SEPTA, Inspector Maureen Powers from Amtrak Police Department, and John Paul Bruno, who's the Deputy Director for Operations at the Office of Emergency Management. All of these leaders have come together. We've been in constant communication throughout the course of the day. We will tell you the things that we can share, and then we'll deal with your questions. First and foremost, on behalf of all the citizens of the City of Philadelphia and folks in the region, our thoughts and our prayers go out to the victims and the families and the entire city of Boston. My very good friend, Mayor Tom Menino, and our good friend Governor Deval Patrick are dealing with this situation, of course, at both the local and state level. I wish both of them the best under these very trying times and circumstances. I know that they're public servants in the city of Boston and, of course, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Those teams of public servants are dealing with this terrible tragedy in the city of Boston. As I mentioned earlier, there is still a lot to know about this particular incident and series of events. Reports continue to roll in, and as again I mentioned, all of you in the news media are making similar reports, and we're monitoring national news media. Of course, as a city government, we have some additional access to information through law enforcement channels. We can just, I think, all agree that there are various reports about numerous devices, possibly explosions, fires. Some may be connected to this incident, and some others may not. At this time, there are no specific threats or threat incidents in Philadelphia. But, of course, we are taking the necessary precautions, and I'll talk in limited detail about those responses. And again, I know that you will all be sensitive in understanding that I will not be sharing every possible detail of our response here in Philadelphia. Like many other East Coast cities, of course, Philadelphia is at a heightened level of security at this point. We, of course, have extended hours and tours of duty for personnel not only in Center City, but we are monitoring actively a variety of key and historic locations in our city. We'll make deployment of personnel decisions in real time based on reports or other events that we may anticipate. The Philadelphia Police Department is coordinating actively with SEPTA, Amtrak, and our Parks and Recreation Department and the National Park Service. And they are also all on heightened alert. We're utilizing all tools, assets, and resources, of course, such as video surveillance and other assets that we have. Given that this was the Boston Marathon, we, of course, have a major race coming up in Philadelphia very shortly, the Independence Blue Cross Broad Street Run, which is on Sunday, May 5th. In light of today's events in Boston, let me assure you that we will step up our security efforts and response for the Boston Marathon, and I'm grateful to Dan Hilferty and Chris Cashman from Independence Blue Cross for their support and coordination. Chris Cashman is here. Runners and spectators will, in fact, see a much more visible security presence on race day for the Broad Street Run to make sure that our runners and spectators are safe. There are many, many things that the public can do, and I want to commend many members of the public who are already doing those things. You can help us a great deal. As we always talk about, if you see something, say something. If you think you might be seeing something and don't fully understand what you think you're seeing, it's better to err on the side of caution. Call 911, call 311, Call the Philadelphia Police Department's tip line, 215-686-8477. Again, 911-311 or the Philadelphia Police Department tip line, 215-686-8477. Information will be received and shared via the Delaware Valley Intelligence Center, also known as the DIVIC. They will ensure that all law enforcement agencies in the entire region have current, accurate information and that they're coordinating fully their activities. Our Homeland Security unit, Chief Inspector Sullivan and his team, again, are key players and partners in this regard. And lastly, you of course know that President Obama has received a direct intelligence briefing from FBI Director Mueller and Secretary of Homeland Security Janet Napolitano. Police Commissioner Ramsey has been in touch with local federal authorities as well. With that, either I or any of the folks who are assembled, we will try to answer any questions that you might have. Dave. Well, again, let us be very, very careful and mindful about the language that we use. I'm not sure at 5-something, whatever time it is right now, for an incident that took place about maybe a little less than 3 hours ago. I don't even know that anyone knows who was responsible for this. I certainly don't know at the moment, so I don't want to start using characteristic language about who may have done what. So I don't know at the moment, as we stand here, whether it was a quote-unquote terrorist, as the term is normally used. But obviously someone has done something, or some group of people have done something. We've not had a conversation, given that this incident is about 3 hours old, as to whether or not we should cancel a race that is taking place, I think, in 2 to 3 weeks. We don't know enough about the incident, what happened, how it happened, or anything else to get into that level of detail. And so at the moment, we're expecting that the Broad Street Run will happen. We will also take necessary precautions and learn from whatever it is that has gone on in Boston in terms of the actual incident. Where were these devices placed? Possibly, hopefully we will know who did what, how they got there, and all of those kinds of details, and then we'll make the right and appropriate and safe decision for that particular event or any other event that's scheduled in the upcoming weeks here in Philadelphia.
Mayor, can you talk about some of the concerns that you're on received from the runners or vendors or people that have taken part in this event?
Again, this is an incident that was less than 3 hours old. We have no expressions of anything from anyone at the moment. I think literally people are kind of glued to television, computer, radio, however it is people get their news, just trying to understand what has happened. What is this about? So I don't think there's been enough time, literally, for folks to have any concern other than the main concern at the moment should be that the latest report that I have is that 2 people have lost their lives and at least 100 folks have been injured in this particular incident. So let's not try to get too far ahead of ourselves at the moment. We have Americans.
Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter talking about the possibility of canceling the Broad Street Run. It's on Sunday, May 5th. He says at this point they have had no discussions of doing so. He also mentioned that the Homeland Security Unit was involved in this investigation. And he mentioned President Obama. We're hearing that the president will be speaking sometime around 6:10. Of course, we will definitely bring that to you.
Our coverage of the Boston Marathon explosions continues in just a moment.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We are dealing with, of course, tragedy in Boston this evening. If you're just joining us, multiple explosions. We're hearing 5 seconds apart at the finish line of the Boston Marathon. We know that at least 2 people are dead. An updated number now, more than 50 are injured, rushed to nearby hospitals, some of them at first being treated in the medical tent that was set up for the runners. Now, this is the scene, and you can see how chaotic it was just moments after the blast. Emergency crews trying to help those that were hurt. We're seeing witnesses help some of the victims, actually using their clothing as tourniquets. We also just heard from Mayor Michael Nutter, and he did update that right now there is no threat against Philadelphia.
We've had an attack.
And thanks for joining us here at 6. I'm Thomas Drayton along with Carrie Barrett. As you look at that video there, the finish line, this is an area on Boylston Street with the highest concentration of people, thousands crowded watching the runners. This is also an area where the media and emergency personnel are set up. We want to actually show you the moment shortly before 3 o'clock when the first explosion took place.
And we do want to warn you before you look at it, it is graphic.
We've had an attack.
Once again, you're looking at the moment shortly before 3 o'clock. You heard the initial explosion. Seconds later, another explosion with a large amount of smoke. More than 50 individuals injured. 2 people at this hour confirmed dead.
We also learned recently that they do have a person of interest in custody. The details, the information about that person, how they were able to find him or her is still coming in. But as soon as we do have that information, we will get to it. Right now, we'd like to join Fox 29's Dave Schrottweiser, who's live at Independence Mall. I know you've been speaking with some of the folks out there. This is the height of tourist season in Philadelphia. Are people worried? What are you hearing?
Well, Kerry, we just finished some of the busiest weeks around the Easter holiday. A lot of class trips in here. A lot of folks that were on vacation coming through the area here through Independence Mall. I will tell you that we've been out here since around 3:45 or so, and there has been intense security here at the mall and around the mall. The counterterrorism unit, the major incident response team, the SWAT team, federal authorities, the folks who patrol the park here, the park marshals for here at Independence Mall, all of the key sites down here. We heard the mayor just a few minutes ago talking in a news conference that they have heightened security at all of the key facilities, the federal building, FBI headquarters, Independence Hall, Independence Mall, the visitor center here, the Constitution Center, down the block at the American Museum for the National Museum for American Jewish History. There's an event there tonight. There's intense security around that building. A lot of dignitaries will be at that. This is some of the video that we have shown throughout the day and some of the stuff on the mall here. But every 2 or 3 minutes, you can see counterterrorism vehicles make their way up and down Market Street, up and down 6th Street, 5th Street, and all Chestnut Street, all the way over to Walnut and back. Constant patrols, including undercover guys that I happen to know, who I know are with the bomb squad here in Philadelphia. They are literally patrolling the area, I'm sure looking for any kind of suspicious activity. You heard the mayor say, if you see something, say something. That's the warning they give out all the time to folks. There has been a release by the FBI saying there is no immediate threat to the city of Philadelphia. All of the security, we're told, is now being handled by Philadelphia Police and SEPTA Police. I talked to the folks over at SEPTA, Chief Tom Nestel, who's just taken over the SEPTA Police, is coordinating with Commissioner Ramsey. They have heightened security on the subways, buses, trains, all kinds of public transportation. Again, as in the Boston situation that developed up there, the attack up there, they're always looking for incidents where there are lots of people gathered, where they can get a bomb could go off and they could get a body count, something that would evoke terror in folks. So anywhere where there's large crowds here in Philadelphia, even though there's no immediate threat here, the heightened security is in place. And again, vehicles left and right coming down Market Street here, 5th Street, 6th Street, all of the surrounding monuments, all of the historical venues here, closely guarded by police tonight. You will see that probably throughout the next several days while they continue to unravel exactly who did this, who is responsible for this. If they can figure that out right away. We heard there's a person of interest already in custody in Boston. So we have some sound here now from Commissioner Ramsey. We also have the Broad Street Run coming up on May 5th about extra security precautions there. Commissioner Charles Ramsey talked about that a short time ago.
Doesn't mean there's any threats to Philadelphia at all. We're not aware of any threats regarding the Broad Street Run, which is the next big event we have coming up. But all this stuff now is something that everyone's going to have to take a look at and see exactly where we are.
Now, you can see right now, this is one of the Homeland Security vehicles stationed on Market Street, right here on Market Street, making a quick U-turn in front of the Federal Building. That's been going on all afternoon. There are dozens of police vehicles making their way up and down. They're also clearing out some of the parking areas along Market Street. That's a precaution they do anytime they heighten security here in downtown Philadelphia, especially here around Independence Mall, where we have so many venues that are visited by so many people. Now, we're after 6 o'clock, so some of them have cleared out. But again, heightened security everywhere down here at Independence Mall. That will continue through the night and the next several days while federal authorities, Boston authorities, and authorities here in Philadelphia unravel exactly what's going on. There is, again, no immediate threat to Philadelphia, according to the FBI, according to the mayor and Commissioner Charles Ramsey, but a heightened level of security here. Folks on their guard. And again, the advice from the mayor, if you see something, say something. It's better to say something and let the police check it out than to worry and wonder and try and decide on your own if something's going on. If you see something, say something. That's the advice from the mayor, the FBI, and the police commissioner tonight. Live at Independence Mall, Dave Schratweiser, Fox 29 News.
The investigation has just begun. Dave, thank you. We do want to head back up to Boston right now. Brad Spicer, one of the marathon runners, is joining us now on the phone. Brad, good to have you with us. Tell us about the exact moment where you were when the first explosion took place.
We're actually out of Boston right now. We were fortunate. I crossed the finish line at 3 hours and 2 minutes. So from what we could see on the news coverage, it looked like it was, the explosion happened about 4 hours and 9 minutes. The scary part for us, my family's okay, and our hearts are heavy for the people that were less fortunate. My 6-year-old son and my mom and dad and my nephew was standing at that exact location where the sporting goods store and the candy store is right there since 9 o'clock this morning. So they were there for a good 4 hours and 5 minutes at that exact location.
Brad, tell us about this particular area, the finish line. We had mentioned it's a heavily concentrated area with a number of individuals watching the finish line, emergency personnel, as well as the media. Tell us about that particular location.
It's the Boston Marathon.
Yeah.
It's one of the the largest spectator viewed events in the world. But right there at the finish line, there's dignitaries. From what I understand, I'm not 100% sure of this, but the governor and some other people or senator, is up, around the finish line. And I know, there was scuttlebutt, and my mom and dad noticed, that there were snipers up on top of the roof. Right there around the finish line. I don't know if that's just, common practice or not. But, it's just the spot to be, for everyone and, important people and loved ones of family members to sit and watch, a special moment. Unfortunately, it's just a tragic event.
You know, we have heard, Brad, as you mentioned, you saw some of the snipers on top of the roofs. We did learn some of the procedures and the precautions that any large city would take in the event of a marathon or any sort of large event taking place. And in fact, having snipers on roofs is one of the things that they do. Welding manhole covers shut, training city cameras on the course. As I understand it, and you clearly are a seasoned marathon runner, at the 4-hour mark, which is about when these explosions hit, I mean, that would kind of be the heart of when the majority of the runners would be crossing the finish line. You know, I don't know that it was planned intentionally that way, but is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, from you know what we understand, it seems like that half of us crossed the finish line, and half of us didn't. I mean, it's just so unbelievable and just so tragic.
What are you thinking? What are you feeling? I mean, we're seeing some of these images come in, and they are heartbreaking to look at. What does it do to you as a runner? And you must be nervous. I imagine that anybody who runs a marathon would be nervous for the next race. We have a race here coming up in Philadelphia in a few weeks, and people are already talking about the fears associated with that. Yeah, I mean, it's something that you don't think about. As a runner, you work so hard, and it's such a positive thing, and then it makes you feel so good, and especially doing any type of marathon, but let alone qualifying for Boston. I mean, it's just
such a difficult day for so many people. Brad Spicer, we certainly appreciate your time. We do want to get to President Barack Obama, who is addressing the situation. Let's listen in.
Security around the United States is necessary, and investigate what happened. The American people will say a prayer in Boston tonight. Michelle and I send our deepest thoughts and prayers to the families of the victims in the wake of this senseless loss. We don't yet have all the answers, but we do know that multiple people have been wounded, some gravely, in explosions at the Boston Marathon. I've spoken to FBI Director Mueller and Secretary of Homeland Security Napolitano, and they're mobilizing the appropriate resources to investigate and to respond. I've updated leaders of Congress in both parties, and we reaffirm that on days like this, there are no Republicans or Democrats. We are Americans, united in concern for our fellow citizens. I've also spoken with Governor Patrick and Mayor Menino and made it clear that they have every single federal resource necessary to care for the victims and counsel the families. And above all, I made clear to them that all Americans stand with the people of Boston. Boston police, firefighters, and first responders, as well as the National Guard, responded heroically and continue to do so as we speak. It's a reminder that so many Americans serve and sacrifice on our behalf every single day without regard to their own safety in dangerous and difficult circumstances. And we salute all those who assisted in responding so quickly and professionally to this tragedy. We still do not know who did this or why. And people shouldn't jump to conclusions before we have all the facts. But make no mistake, we will get to the bottom of this. And we will find out who did this. We'll find out why they did this. Any responsible individuals, any responsible groups will feel the full weight of justice. Today is a holiday in Massachusetts, Patriots' Day. It's a day that celebrates the free and fiercely independent spirit that this great American city of Boston has reflected from the earliest days of our nation. And it's a day that draws the world to Boston's streets in a spirit of friendly competition. Boston is a tough and resilient town, so are its people. I'm supremely confident that Bostonians will pull together, take care of each other, and move forward as one proud city. And as they do, the American people will be with them every single step of the way. You should anticipate that as we get more information, our teams will provide you briefings. We're still in the investigation stage at this point, but I just want to reiterate, we will find out who did this, and we will hold them accountable. Thank you very much.
Once again, the President Barack Obama, addressing the situation in Boston at the Boston Marathon. The major question at this hour is why. We do not know why, but the President said we will get to the bottom of this. Our sister station in Boston has additional extensive coverage at this hour on the explosions.
In fact, let's take a listen now. Okay, we're going to get to that in just a moment. Right now, though, as we've been reporting, the FBI investigating this as a possible terrorist incident. You just heard President Obama say we don't know at this point who it was, if there were a number of people involved, or why they did it, but we do know that they are investigating it as a potential terrorist incident.
Certainly calls into question the timing of these explosions. As we mentioned, we don't know why, as investigators are still trying to piece this together. Let's go to our Dave Kinchin, who's joining us now with more on this coverage. Dave.
Yeah, Mayor Michael Nutter just spoke here in the reception room of City Hall a few minutes ago. He was joined by public safety directors from all across the city, from Amtrak, from SEPTA, Homeland Security folks as well, and people associated with the Broad Street Run. As far as security in the city right now, he says that security is boosted, that he's working with every single agency. Police are working with all public safety agencies to make sure that everyone is safe, to make sure that they're being extra vigilant. He did obviously talk about the Broad Street Run, which is just a couple of weeks away. He said that at this point there are no plans to cancel the Broad Street Run. There will be boosted security there. Some officers in plain clothes, others obviously, certainly not visible, but that people will see a boosted presence there. He is expecting about 40,000 runners to take part in this event. So as you can imagine, a lot of people just in terms of the body of athletes alone, let alone vendors and spectators from all over the place that are going to be taking part in this event. He stressed that there will be security there, and that he's working with every single agency to make sure that people feel as safe as they can in the city, not just for that event, but from here on out. Again, all agencies working together. That's the story here at City Hall. We'll send it back to you.
All right, Dave Kinchin live for us at City Hall. We'll keep catching up with you throughout the evening. Some new information I do want to get to that just came from the Boston Police Commissioner. He is now reporting that the JFK explosion, that is the third explosion, is unrelated to the initial two. We don't know how they came to that conclusion, but we are hearing from the Boston Police Commissioner that the JFK explosion is unrelated. We are also hearing that person in custody, the person of interest, they do not have a person of interest in custody. And again, as the details come into us, we are not sure whether they had somebody and have since determined that in fact they were not involved, or if in fact they never had a person of interest in custody to begin with. Again, the details are still coming in. We're sorting through them. As soon as we get new information, we'll obviously bring it to you.
There's still a developing scene, still a breaking development out of Boston. 2 explosions at the Boston Marathon, injuring more than 50 and killing 2 people. Fox 29 News coverage of this tragedy continues next. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, 2 explosives set off at the finish line of the Boston Marathon this afternoon shortly before 3 o'clock. 2 people are dead. More than 50 others are in the hospital. 2 more explosive devices were found nearby and detonated safely by police. At this hour, there is no threat in Philadelphia, and the White House says they are not on lockdown. But with these explosions in Boston, Philadelphia police are on high alert.
They certainly are. Dave Schrottweiser live at Independence Mall with Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey. Dave?
Kerry, thank you very much again. Commissioner Ramsey, good enough to join us right after the mayor's news conference. Commissioner, let's get right to you if we can. Heightened security-wise, what's going on here in Philadelphia?
Well, we've got additional personnel working. We've been coordinating with SEPTA, with Amtrak, with the National Park Service to provide some additional support and visibility, especially downtown and other areas where people gather.
We're right at Independence Mall. This is the busy season down here.
Right.
Lots of tourist groups, class trips, things like that. What can you tell folks tonight about security down here?
Well, security has been heightened, but there have been no threats to Philadelphia at all. I've checked on several occasions now with the FBI, with our own Delaware Valley Intelligence Center. But as a precaution, like most agencies, especially those along the East Coast, we're taking precautions.
Commissioner, you saw what's happened in Boston. Your thoughts on the way this went down in Boston and the response up there?
Well, I mean, it's very early now to know exactly what took place. I've been following it like everybody else, but obviously you had some very, very serious injuries. I'm told a couple of fatalities. I don't know who's responsible. I don't know anything about delivery mechanisms or anything else at this point, but obviously we're all very concerned.
Commissioner, this is what they look for, big events like this where there's a large body count if they're going to explode a bomb, that kind of thing. talk about that a little bit. This is probably an ideal situation for any kind of terrorist situation like that, correct?
Well, I mean, that is something that you have to take in consideration, but at the same time, I mean, we can't be afraid to go outside, can't be afraid to run events. So we'll do everything we can to make sure everything is secure, but we really need the public's help, not just here in Philly, but across the country. If you see something, say something. Give us a call. Our number here is 215-686-8477 if you see anything at all suspicious.
All right, we heard the mayor talk a little bit about the Broad Street Run coming up on May 5th. That's a few Sundays from now. Lots of folks running that race. We're going to have added security there as well, correct?
Yeah, we'll have extra police officers there, and we'll have some things that you won't actually be aware of because we'll have some undercover people out there as well.
Would we think about screening runners and pedestrians and folks who come out to watch that race at this point near the finish line, areas like that?
Well, we haven't gotten that far yet in our thinking. This just happened 3 hours ago, so we're going to review all of our security, what we normally do, what we may need to do to enhance it. It's far too early to come up with any real plans.
I talked to Chief Tom Nestel from SEPTA this afternoon. Also, he's working closely with you to coordinate this as well.
Yeah, we work very closely with SEPTA on a regular basis, and certainly we've been in touch with Chief Nestel. We've been in touch with Amtrak, Chief Hansen over at Amtrak, been in touch with the FBI. We've been in touch with a lot of different agencies.
All right, I've been here for about 2 hours now. There's definitely a stepped-up police presence in the area. Counterterrorism, SWAT, major incident response team, all those guys very, very, very present here tonight.
Well, until we know what's going on, it's the wise thing to do, and we're going to continue it.
All right, Commissioner, thank you for stopping by. I appreciate that. Good to see you again. Not under these circumstances, but thank you for coming by. Again, that's the latest from here at Independence Mall. You heard the Commissioner talk about stepped-up security all over the city. No immediate threat to Philadelphia. Also added security for the Broad Street Run that's coming up in a couple of weeks. Plans for that, obviously, this just happened 3 hours ago, still underway. But the Commissioner, SEPTA, the Mayor, everybody here in Philadelphia on high alert. Folks are staying over. Extra police patrols are being kept on to the next detail tonight. So security heightened. But again, the Commissioner and the Mayor stressing today, if you see something, say something. That's the best action you can take as a member of the public. Live at Independence Mall, I'm Dave Stratweiser, Fox 29 News.
Can't stress it enough, Dave. Thank you. Of course, we are all reeling from this tragedy, trying to figure out how it could happen and certainly what happens now.
Claudia Gomez joining us now from Wayne with security expert Jack DiMarcio. Claudia?
That's right. We want to stress before we begin this conversation that, of course, because this event is so new, facts still coming in. We don't have a complete picture, but we do want to talk to Jack DiMarcio to try to get a sense of what we may be looking at here, Jack. Jack, of course, we should tell you, terrorism expert, former high-ranking Homeland Security official. Jack, these were portable devices, several devices, no advanced warning. Does that tell you anything?
Well, as you said, it's a very fluid situation. Right now, it sounds like it may be a group or one or two people, backpacks, small devices. This reminds me of what we saw in Spain, what we saw in London several years ago. But, you know, given what today is, in Boston, it's Patriots Day. It's kind of a holiday up there. And it's also tax day. It's April 15th. So what this leads me to believe is we may have a domestic actor as opposed to a foreign actor, but it's still very early to tell.
Timothy McVeigh, of course, Oklahoma City. It does sound coordinated, but you're saying that doesn't necessarily mean it's al-Qaeda affiliated.
That's correct. Right now, Department of Homeland Security, Boston PD, National Guard, FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, they've all swung into action right now. They're collecting evidence. They're looking for people. They're looking at videos. There's a lot of cameras in Boston. So obviously you'll see, I suspect you will see some images eventually coming up where maybe an individual will be seen doing something suspicious. These will be the first and very important leads.
We've also heard comparisons to these devices, these bombs, being compared to IEDs, which, of course, we've seen in Iraq and Afghanistan.
That's correct. The technology for these explosive devices has really come a long way since 10 or 11 years ago. So you can really pack a pretty good wallop in a very small delivery device, and I think that's what we may have here.
Unfortunately, what we have seen in Boston today. That's it from Wayne. We'll send it back to you for now.
All right, Claudia, thank you. And of course, we will continue to follow this tragic story out of Boston. 2 dead, at least 50 others injured after 2 explosions at the finish line of the Boston Marathon.
We, of course, will have all the information on the Fox 29 News at 10. And remember to check our website, myfoxphilly.com, for the very latest information. Anything major comes out, we will certainly bring it to you first.
We're out of time here at 6. We'll see you back here at 10.